Someone, I think it was Greil Marcus, said he really felt that Chuck Berry was the natural heir to Robert Johnson.
Oh, I don't see that.
I don't either.
I see, if anything, Jimi Hendrix. They both went down real young. They both were incredibly prodigious, incredibly ahead of their time. People are still doing things that Hendrix just threw away. Not the detail stuff, it's just stuff he just threw away. From what I can see, all of electric guitar music, except for certain sort of jazz, which I'm sure he could have played, but I really never heard him do, and synthesized it into one massive style. I would say more Hendrix.
There's a thing I read, in fact, just recently. Great story about the first time you saw Hendrix.
Well, the first time I saw Hendrix, I had seen him before and not paid any attention to him. I'd seen him play with Little Richard and the Isley Brothers and not paid any attention. First time I really noticed him, I was playing with the Butterfield Blues Band at a club called the Cafe A Go-Go in New York, and he was right across the street, very small place, I don't know the name of it, and he had a band called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, and they were obviously just pickup musicians. They had gotten to just learn a few tunes so he could do what he wanted to play. And I was considered the hot guitar player on the street at that time. I walked in there, and I sat down with a friend of mine, another guitar player, and Jimi Hendrix just watched me sit down, and I remember he was playing his Stratocaster, and he had a twin reverb amp, and he had a regular Gibson Maestro fuzz tone, and he had a wah-wah pedal, and he got every sound out of those that I would hear on all his subsequent records, or in subsequent concerts where he had stacks of Marshall or Sun amps and rows of foot pedals. He was getting them there. Bombs exploded. Airplanes took off. Buildings collapsed. It was a holocaust. Plus, endless amount of incredible playing. He just did it with a little half-assed grin on his face. I was sitting in the front row, and I was just blown away. It's like there was just no contest. He played about an hour set. The first 40 minutes was just making these unbelievable sounds and noises. Then he started playing music. And for a while, I said, well, he can make all these sounds, but okay, can he really play? The next day I heard him playing. He could play better than he can make sounds. And then he incorporated them both together. And you could see that the sounds and the playing was all the same thing. Sounds were as much a part of his music as notes were. And if you could take a note and put so much oomph to it that it was part sound and part note, so the note was just an explosion of a note, a screech or whatever, well, this was the man's style. Right then I said, this is it. Every chance I heard, I would study. It was the first guitar player that I'd really started studying in a long, long time. Not to learn how to play like him, but just, I said, he is obviously doing something so different than anyone else has ever considered doing. In so many ways, I could see here was someone, because I was always a very straight-ahead guitar player. I'd plug into an amp, and I didn't use any devices or anything. And I could see here was somebody using electricity to enhance his music in a way so that he could meld sound with notes in a way that would make the whole thing a stronger, more vivid musical experience. And especially because he just had a trio, and he had to fill up all that sound himself. All that space, all that area, empty oral space, and he had to fill it up himself. If you ever watched Hendrix play, you couldn't figure out what he was doing. I mean, he had very huge hands. He was sort of a small man with enormous hands. He had very unorthodox finger positions. Even watching the Jimi Hendrix movie, I've seen it slowly stop, freeze frame to try to figure out what he's doing. I just couldn't understand how he would get all the sounds he would get.